Hi, Bree Wizard here from thefeatherbrain.com. Today I'm going to talk to you about what to use in your nesting boxes. So I actually got two emails yesterday, one from Jamie and one from Terry. So hi Jamie, hi Terry. They were both asking about this question. Jamie wanted to know if she should use straw in her nesting boxes, and the short answer is yes, straw is a great material for nesting boxes. And Terry wanted to know if he could use sand in his nesting boxes, or if he should use something else, or if he should just leave them empty. So the short answer is yes, sand is fine. Sand is fine in the nesting box. There are some other materials you can use that the hens might like better than sand, and we'll go over those today. And then lastly, you don't want to just leave it empty. And there are two reasons you don't want to leave it empty. The first is that with that hard surface, when the egg comes out, it can actually crack if it's on plywood or plastic or anything hard like that. And so the nesting box material actually acts to cushion that fall of the egg. So that's one reason you want nesting box material. And then the second reason is that your hens really want soft material in their nesting box, and they have some certain nesting behaviors that they need to perform for their own psychological well-being. And so sorry, I've got a lot of roosters. It does require that you put certain types of material inside your nesting box. So there are three findings that academic studies have just come across over and over again about hen nesting behavior. The first one is that they overwhelmingly prefer to have nesting material in their nesting boxes as opposed to not. They prefer to have a loose organic material over something like AstroTurf or plastic or rubber. The second thing is that hens have this very strong drive to kick the material around and to mold it, so there's a little bit of a depression in the material. They just kind of make a little bowl, but they love to just get up and kick it around and move the material, and they have such a strong drive for that. So if you don't have material in your nesting box where they can do that, they can actually get very frustrated, and that can make their nesting behavior much less enjoyable for them. And then the third thing that hens really need to do for their own psychological benefit in the nesting box is they like to manipulate the material with their beaks. So you'll see if you have a loose material, your hens will grab it and they'll toss it on their backs, and they'll toss it all over, and they'll toss, if they find feathers, they'll toss feathers around. They'll stick their head in the next nesting box over and grab some of that material, and they just toss it around. It's very cute, and they get a lot of pleasure out of that, and that's very natural behavior that you want to let your hens perform if you're able to. And if you guys want to look at this scientific data for yourself, I will link to references below. So I've tested about 10 different nesting materials for my chickens in their nesting boxes, and I found you can kind of group them into three categories. Those they hate or really dislike, those that they like others better but they'll tolerate them, kind of a middle okay category, and then the nesting materials that they just love. So I want to talk about what they really hate. So you might imagine that this is a nesting box material that they absolutely hated, and they hated this one more than any other. I rotated these around my nesting boxes for about 3 or 4 months, and not one hen laid a single egg on this material. It's not comfortable. They can't practice natural behaviors on it, so it's a very frustrating material for them. And so I just don't recommend you get these plastic or rubber nesting box pads. In this chicken coop, I'm using sand in the nesting boxes, so let's take a look at that. Sand kind of occupies a middle ground when it comes to nesting box material. Your hens would rather lay on organic material, and if they have the choice of that and sand, they will choose the organic material. But if sand is all that's available, they will lay on it, unlike the plastic pads. And that kind of makes sense when you think about it, because sand is so much more comfortable for them than the plastic, and they are able to get in there and kick the material around and manipulate it, which they love. The problem with sand is that it's just so loose that they're not able to get that bowl-shaped depression that they like so much. And so that's why we've got sand as a middle option. But if you want to give your hens the nesting material they really love, then you need to give them something that's loose and organic. So the easiest and most affordable option for that is typically straw. So let's go take a look at that. So I grabbed a couple of nesting boxes here off of my patio. So this litter box here actually does have straw in it right now, and they just love this material. So straw is wonderful because they can kick it around. They can very easily manipulate it with their beak and toss it on their backs like they like to do. And it's wonderful because it's very easy for them to make that bowl-shaped depression that they like so much. So straw is a great option. You can also use other organic types, like hemp is a good one. Aspen shavings are good. Even shredded paper you can use as long as you're not getting too much moisture in your nesting box. Two things you need to watch out for with these kind of beddings. So first of all, because the bedding is so loose and your hens like to kick it around, they will kick it out of your nesting box if this front lip is too low. So that's fine if you have the same bedding on your coop floor, but if you're like me and you have sand, it's just the worst when you get these other bedding types mixed in with your sand. So in order to counteract that, if you have kind of a regular wooden nesting box, you could just put another board up to make your box a little bit deeper, and that really helps. And then this nesting box up here has something very special in it, and I'm gonna come back to that at the end of this video. So now I'm in my largest chicken coop, and you can see here we've got a couple of girls laying. There's another one right here thinking about laying. And these girls are all using Aspen nesting pad liners. This material is super loose. It's really, really thick. You definitely want to buy the thick ones. You can find some really cheap ones online, but they end up being so thin. They end up just kind of having this taper in the bottom and then one really thin lining of Aspen. And the hens just tear them up. They're also too small, so I just don't suggest you get those at all. They're pretty much useless. But these really thick ones, they're great. So I said we'd come back to this nesting box material, and I saved it for last because this is the nesting box material that your hens will love over all others. So if you want to give the royal treatment to your hens and you have money to spare, this is the way to go. And you're wondering, what the heck is that? It's Raffia. So it's actually advertised on Amazon as natural grass. That's all that they call it. And so I emailed the manufacturer, mostly because my hens were just obsessed with it. And the manufacturer told me that it's actually made from Raffia trees, which are a type of palm tree that comes from Africa. And this stuff is just incredible. I did an experiment over the course of 3 to 4 months on 10, maybe even more than 10 different nesting box materials. I did it in my large coop, and so I had 8 nesting boxes, and each box had a different material, and I rotated them all around over the course of months. And then I took measurements on how many eggs were laid in each material. And so someday I will share that information with you in some pretty graphs, and I've got some great B-roll of hens testing out all the different boxes one after another. But the result of that was that out of all the bedding materials, this is what the hens wanted. And if there was just one box with this material, they would all try to lay in it. I believe that the reason they love it so much is that it's super, super soft. It's kind of like silky soft. And then it's really easy for them to manipulate with their beaks. They can just easily break it off and toss it on themselves. They also can make that bowl-shaped depression. But I think what really separates it from the others is that it's so fluffy. So the hens will get in there, they'll mold it to what they want, and they'll lay in the middle of that, and then all of the raffia just puffs up around them, so it stays just really, really puffy. And then they're just kind of hidden in there, hidden in this grass. So the only downside to this material is that it's expensive. So you can only buy one of these at a time, and it's $10, or at the time that I'm recording this, it's about $10 for just one of these. So over the long term, that's not an option that most of us are able to afford. So when I do use Raffia, I had some extra from testing it, which is why it's in here now. But when I do use it is when I have brand new pullets who are just coming into lay. So pullets, they don't know that they're supposed to lay in nesting boxes. That's something that they have to learn. So when your chicks first start coming into lay, they'll lay eggs in your litter, which is terrible, your droppings board, they'll lay them outside. And so I like to put the Raffia in the nesting boxes when they first start because they love the material so much that that actually speeds up their learning for laying. So after they learn how to use those nesting boxes, I then will replace this with something that's a little bit more affordable. Hello, Quiggles. All right, so we've come full circle. The best nesting box materials are Aspen pad nesting liners, loose organic material like straw or hemp, or the gold standard Raffia. And you do want to make sure that you can layer your bedding as thickly as you can. Studies show that hens really like thick bedding as opposed to thin, so keep that in mind. Before I go, if you are brand new to chickens, be sure to check out my Who is Your Chicken Soulmate quiz. It will help you find the perfect chicken breed for your needs, your climate, your setup, all of those things. So I will link to that in the description below. Until next time.